Joining us tonight, spending some time with us. We've got a really awesome panel to talk to tonight about COVID-19 in our jails and prisons, and a special session that's coming up. And so we've got some awesome legislators to talk to. I am here to introduce our wonderful moderator tonight, who is Jen Carter. So Jen is the co-founder of the Humanization Project. This is an organization that she started with her partner, who's currently behind bars. They work to humanize people behind bars in the eyes of the general public, sharing their stories, hopes, their passions, and their dreams through interviews, research, correspondence programs, and writing, and compassionate criminal justice reform. She's an absolute rock star in the legislative session, and has been helpful in even supporting some really great legislation. So I'll let Jen take it away.
All right, thank you so much, Jenny, and it's such a pleasure to moderate tonight. I am so happy to have Senator Morrissey, Delegate Scott, and Delegate Hope here with us. I may be a little partial, but I think the three of them are three of the people in the legislation that get it most, and I'm so excited that they're all here. So let me just introduce all of them really quickly for those of you who don't know much about them. Delegate Scott is always succinct and to the point, and so his bio is that way, which I kind of love. Delegate Scott represents House District 80 in Portsmouth, Virginia. He was elected to the House of Delegates in November 2019. He is a member of the House Courts of Justice, Finance, and the Communication Technology and Innovation Committees. Delegate Hope. Patrick A. Hope is a member of the Virginia General Assembly as the delegate from the 47th District of the Commonwealth of Virginia and was re-elected for his 6th term in 2019. Delegate Hope is a healthcare attorney with over 20 years of experience working for Virginia and has been recognized by numerous organizations. He serves as chair of the House Public Safety Committee, a member of the House Courts of Justice Committee, and the House Health, Welfare, and Institutions Committee. Patrick was born in San Antonio, Texas, a high school graduate of Castle Hills First Baptist School in San Antonio. Hope received his Bachelor's of Arts degree in history from St. Mary's University in San Antonio, and then received his Master's of Arts degree in Congressional Studies from the Catholic University of Washington, D.C., and then received a Juris Doctorate degree from the Catholic University Columbus School of Law in Washington, D.C. And then Senator Morrissey. Senator Joe Morrissey was born in Washington, D.C. on September 23rd, 1957. He received his bachelor's degree in chemistry and economics from the University of Virginia. Senator Morrissey went on to receive his Juris Doctorate from the Georgetown University and his Master of Law degree at Trinity College in Dublin, Ireland. Senator Morrissey was elected the City of Richmond's Commonwealth Attorney in 1989 and served in that role until 1993. Upon leaving his role as Commonwealth Attorney in Richmond, Senator Morrissey practiced law as a criminal defense attorney until 2018. Senator Morrissey served in the Virginia House of Delegates from 2008 until 2015 and was elected the state senator representing the 16th senatorial district in November of 2019. So thank you all for being here. We're so excited for this discussion tonight. Tonight, as you may know, our focus is on the upcoming special session and what it means and what you all, as our legislators, can do to help people behind bars during this time. We know there's a lot of attention on policing right now, and rightfully so, but policing and prisons are two sides of the same coin. And so we feel really strongly that prison and criminal justice reform in general also be a focus during this special session. So can we start by having each of you share your priorities and thoughts on what can be done during this special session? And I was hoping, if you don't mind, Delegate Hope, as Chair of Public Safety, if you wouldn't mind going first, and can you start by just explaining what a special session is, what we know about the one coming up, and also what we don't know, because I think there are some unknowns at this point, if I'm not correct. I know a lot of people watching tonight would really like to learn about it, and I think a lot of people don't know what a special session even means, and it'd be great just to clarify and kind of educate everyone on what we have coming up here in August, and then go ahead and share your priorities, and then we'll rotate around the panel.
Sure. No, thank you, Jen. And I appreciate the opportunity to come here. The list of the advocates that are engaged in this topic are very extremely helpful to us in pursuing criminal justice reform and prison reform. It's something that's very close to me. And I appreciate working with every single one of you. And thank you for hosting tonight's forum. In terms of this special session, I'll tell you what I know. We think it's going to convene in sometime end of August, maybe early September. We could last for more than just a few days. It could be a week or more because the topics are very broad. Usually a special session is very targeted in what the types of things it can take up. It can't take up everything. And so the subject matter will be very constricted to budget language related to the COVID pandemic, police reform, and some criminal justice reforms. And in the House, we're taking this matter approach, I think, a little bit differently than what the Senate is doing. You've seen some very good progressive lists from the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus, from the Senate Democrats have put out some very strong lists as well. We've taken a slight different tact where we haven't publicized any lists, although we look at those lists and try to think to ourselves, what's the best way to package these ideas and maybe some bigger types of reforms. We want to use the opportunity to launch 3 public hearings, and something that we haven't done in the House before is in addition to inviting expert testimony to come and present to us at those 3 hearings. And by the way, for your calendar purposes, July 22nd, July 29th, and August the 6th. And there'll be 3-hour-long hearings. We will have some experts come from all over the country to talk to us about different aspects of police reform and criminal justice reform. And we're going to allot a certain amount of time, about an hour for each of these hearings, to hear from the public. And so we'll have an opportunity to hear different perspectives and different views, because as we're thinking about some of the things that we're going to present during the special session, we want to make sure we take all views into consideration. So we've created a process, a very formal process, and we want to be very thoughtful about it. But I can tell you the list that I've seen from the Senate Democrats, and they had a great hearing last week. I agree with most everything that's already been put up there. I think the real question for us is, can we tackle it in the special session, and what can we tackle then we need to reserve for a longer term strategy in 2021? On a concurrent track, you've got the Crime Commission that is also taking a look at some things that they feel like needs a little bit more time. And so that will be the debate between the Senate Democrats and House Democrats to figure out what are those things that are ready, that we can send a strong message that we're ready to execute. You can tell that the ground has started to shift on a lot of these issues. And some of the topics that came up during our last session in January and February, people didn't feel like we're ready, have changed their views, and they really want to get busy to doing some things. We have some sort of general broad themes that we've put together in the House. We're looking at, for police reform, we're looking at accreditation and training. We're going to tackle body-worn cameras. Civil oversight boards. I've heard from a lot of different advocacy groups and many of my constituents to do something really active in the civil oversight board area. There will be some criminal justice reform ideas. We can get specific in some of these different areas, but these are some of the higher themes. Officer response and demilitarization efforts as well too. And you'll see some activities on police misconduct and accountability. And so those are sort of the general themes that I think will be covered in the 3 hearings. And I think from each of those has a lot of different really good ideas. I don't know if you're going to see dozens and dozens of different bills introduced. You might see some omnibus, some big theme bills introduced that do several things within them. I think that's a possibility. I just don't know how it will all play out. But I think that it's safe to say that the House perspective certainly is that we're listening to the public and we want to take all views into account. But I think there's a commitment from every single one of us to act decisively, and to act decisively in the special session and decide which matters need a little bit more conversation, and they will be attacked in the 2021 session. I'm very confident of that. So let me stop there, and we can continue going to the next speakers.
Yeah, great. So thank you, Delegate Hope. Delegate Scott, you want to jump in and talk a little bit about your priorities and what you're thinking with special session?
Yeah, I'm loath to go before my senior, Joe Morrissey here, but I'll go ahead and give it a shot since you put me on the spot, Jen. First of all, I want to thank everybody for having me this evening. Um, I know one of the things I want to start out with my priorities before I get into that. Sometimes, you have a priority and a philosophy, and as I was running, I ran on criminal justice reform before before it got so popular. I know there have been others fighting for this stuff all along as well. Senator Morrissey, I didn't know about Patrick as much, but I know Senator Morrissey has been fighting for these issues as well for a long time. I followed him. But what is really important, I want to say something to everybody that's listening. It's really important that you bring your ideas to us sometimes. I had a framework of things that I wanted to do, and I can tell you, one of the bills that I'm most excited about, I wanted to do it, and I was trying to figure out how I wanted to do it. And then Jen Carter just kind of gave me a bill to look at that everybody else rejected. You know what I mean? So she came to me last, and I got the leftovers to look at, and lo and behold, I read the bill and I loved it, and it turned into the bill that I'm fighting for now, and it's one of my priorities, which is the earned time credit bill. And I wrote an article about it, and wrote a post about it that basically said that it's important that um, I don't think it's a bipartisan issue that we believe in hope, rehabilitation, and second chances. And I'm hopeful that everybody else will be that to do that and allow people to earn good time credit. If we really have a system that we believe rehabilitates people, then if that system is really working and we believe it works, then we should be, excited about welcoming people back home as soon as possible once they met certain goals and evidence-based, learning, education, and other things while they're there to get better. So we can begin to decarcerate uh, and reimagine how we view prison. I think it's very difficult in our society now because we view prison as such a part of our culture. Every day I'm in court and I'm seeing judges give out huge numbers of time. I was in federal court. I got 20 years. Everybody knows that he was a middleman. He didn't profit at all from it. Uh, Nobody got hurt. At least in this case, nobody got hurt. And he got 20 years, and everybody just kind of and he asked for 20 years because the system is so uh, uh, difficult and draconian. He asked for 20 years, and I'm in court last week, and so every day I get to see how foul this system really is. Our criminal punishment system. It's not a justice system; it's a punishment system across the board. And so I would just hope that everybody will stay engaged. That when I heard Patrick explaining about the special session and then the next session, the folks that really care about these issues or care about the issues that they've always cared about. You look at the Second Amendment folks, they never stop fighting for their issues. They never stop showing up for their issues. They always show up in numbers. And I'm hopeful that we can do the same. Jen and others last session, and Patrick knows this firsthand, Patrick Hope, I introduced that earned time credit bill, and I was just kind of fighting for it and doing my thing all around the place. And then it came time for me to come and present my bill at public safety downstairs. And I think the room was too small. They didn't know what the bill was about. They didn't understand it. And it was about 100 and something people sitting out lined up. And I remember like it was yesterday, the speaker and her staff came down like, hold on, man, what the heck is going on? We may have to cancel this thing. Now, we're not canceling this. And I can tell you, I was at the point where like, I don't know these people. I didn't send out any Twitter blasts. I just got on Twitter. I didn't send out any Twitter, but I didn't do anything. People were clamoring for hope and opportunity to see their loved ones get a second chance. And they saw it as a chance to end it, and they came in huge numbers. Patrick was there. I know he was shocked. And if we do that, if that energy can come on these things and we can get around it, then we can sustain a movement. And we know that the people that we care about the most, they don't have the time and the energy or the resources to take time off. They don't. They're already fighting, even if their loved ones are there, they're fighting just to survive. So we have to even be double and quadruple our efforts to make sure that we keep as many people as possible engaged, because that's what the legislature pays attention to. People engage and money. Engagement can beat money every time if we do it right. And I'm gonna close on that. Otherwise, I'll go on forever. Thank you.
Thank you, Don, and I really appreciate you saying that. And that's of course what we're trying to do this year is to get as much engagement as possible. So we're working on it, and it'll be even bigger. So, all right, Senator Morrissey, go ahead and let us know what your priorities and thoughts are for the special session.
Thanks, Jen. First of all, thanks for inviting me. It's great to be back with my friends Don and Patrick. I served in the House with Patrick, and both of them are doing a fantastic job. It's an honor to be on a panel with them and the rest of the folks. I ran for the Senate because I wanted to be my primary purpose, my main agenda is criminal justice reform. I see so many horrific things going on that I want to correct it. And we made some large leaps forward last year. But whether or not it's parole reform, policing and police practice reform, sentence reform, I consider it all the same thing, criminal justice reform. Let me tell you the single biggest issue that I want to see get done in this special session. And that is to reform the system where in Virginia, one of only 4 states where the juries, if somebody selects a jury to be the trier of guilt or innocence, the jury also does sentencing instead of the judge. The jury is not given the sentencing guidelines. The jury doesn't know about the history of sentencing, parole or lack of parole. The number one person who has the most information and is best equipped to sentence, the judge, can't do it, and the jury is kept in the dark, and it's a disgrace. And it's done because prosecutors feel that they can extract huge draconian plea agreements by telling people, take this plea agreement, or they'll say, take your jury trial, which is code for you could get decades in prison. And people then, they opt not to take jury trials. They plead guilty. So we in the Senate have opted to go big this session. I think the special session began with an idea that, well, we've got to plug a $500 million to $1 billion hole in the budget, which is now actually going to be about $225 million. No, we're not happy with that. We want to move forward with reform, significant reform. And I look at it as a carryover to what we did last year. I was just elected last year, and I campaigned on reestablishing parole in Virginia. And so I introduced a bill that fishback defendants would get not only be eligible for parole, but would be given priority. I am saddened that we didn't abolish parole last session, but we're going to do it this session. All right. So I'm not going to, let me wait till I hear some of your questions, and I'll get more into the weeds on this issue of jury trial, which is a state and federal constitutional right, and what I want to see judge sentencing. And can't wait to answer some of your questions.
Wonderful. Thank you, Senator Morrissey. And I think a lot of people don't realize how that works with the push for plea deals and how 95 to 97% of all cases are done by plea these days. Is that right?
It is. And what happens is that, and that's fine. And we will get back, we will continue that situation. But here's what's going to happen. Prosecutors will be forced to give a plea offer that is commensurate with a crime. Right now, a typical situation, as Don and Patrick know, is a prosecutor will say, here's the plea offer, 4 years. Well, the person may be innocent, or it may not warrant more than 4 months, but the alternative is the prosecutor will say, take a jury sentence, and they could get decades. And that is not an exaggeration. It's not hyperbole. It's what occurs. And that's wrong. We have a federal system where the jury tries the person and the judge sentences. And it works pretty well. Forgetting, in fact, the mandatory minimums, which is another issue. 46 out of 50 states have jury trial and judge sentencings, but not in Virginia. And defendants are just forced to accept pleas that are unwarranted. And so what will happen is this. prosecutors are already mobilizing, and their effort is they're going to be saying the following. Oh, if we go along with Morrissey's bill, the jury system will be overrun with people requesting jury trials. The facts don't support that in other states. It doesn't happen. But here's what's happening, Jen and others. People are foregoing their right to a jury trial because they know that in only 8% of the cases will a judge modify downwards a jury verdict. So here's what I want everybody to leave with this thought. As horrific as it was to see somebody brutalized, police brutality or excessive force, we've all seen it, and it is horrific. That pales into comparison to the process right now where defendants are forced to either accept an outrageous plea or go to a jury trial. Because let me tell you something, as bad as it is to punch a handcuffed man in the face or put your knee into his back or head, imagine somebody who the Commonwealth offered 4 years and he said, no, I didn't do it. The jury, he gets convicted with a jury and he gets 40 years. Judges rarely do they upset those verdicts. Who is affected? That defendant, the family, brothers, sisters, children, parents. It far exceeds the lone singular event of an incident of police brutality. It's my number one goal to correct this injustice.
Can I just get in here, Jen? Because I think it's really important. I mean, Senator Morrissey is very passionate about this, and he's always been passionate about it. The dynamics have changed right now. It's not with George Floyd. It's not just with the COVID crisis that we're in. People are now recognizing the racial inequities that are inherent in our prison and criminal justice system. And you have a committed group of elected officials that are in power to do something about it. And that's why it's so important that we have these types of sessions and that you take the opportunity to come and testify at these hearings that we're having, because we do have the opportunity. I would say we have 2 bites at the apple. I would slightly disagree with Senator Morrissey about what happened in the 2020 session. I believe that we missed opportunities in the 2020 session. I think we did some really good things on some really big issues, but it was kind of underwhelming of what we did in criminal justice reform. And most members on our side recognize that, and they want to take action. And so I think we have a tremendous opportunity right now to deal with some issues in the special session and tee up for the 2021 session. We can't do all of these issues just because we just don't have the bandwidth or the time, but we can prioritize, and that's what we need to do. And you have a group of people here, but my colleagues as well too, that they are as committed as Senator Morrissey and Delegate Scott and myself to get something done.
Great, thank you, Delegate Hope. So I want to bring us back around. It's great to hear all of your priorities and all your thoughts on the special session. I want to bring us back around for a moment. So this is the Virginia COVID-19 Justice Coalition, and each organization has their own focus. The Humanization Project, of course, we have our own focus, but this coalition is really about justice during the COVID crisis. So I want to just briefly read our coalition demands so that we all have them in our mind as we go through the next set of questions. So our demands as the coalition are to release any person in custody who does not pose a demonstrable imminent threat of bodily harm to someone else, to release those people as soon as possible, and that statewide and local decision makers must hold themselves accountable with transparency and share information daily with the public. So, as you know, the Humanization Project works to humanize people behind bars. So we are in constant contact with people behind bars. Daily, I receive stories and anecdotes of the horrible conditions behind bars during this crisis. I have heard of people getting literally saran wrapped into their cells in 90-degree heat with no AC. In the middle of this pandemic, where cleanliness and sanitation are key, some people have been denied showers for over a week. Water is occasionally not being distributed. They are not being given enough food. People are not allowed to contact their loved ones for sometimes weeks on end. I could go on, and if you're interested, I'd be happy to send you a whole bunch of more specific information. My main contacts are at State Farm Enterprise Unit, but experiences like this are happening at almost every facility across the state. So when I reached out to get questions for you all from people behind bars, I got many, and I have chosen ones that focus on our coalition demands. When behind bars, as you may know, it can feel like your voice is never heard. So thank you for listening and taking these questions. So, as I said, these questions are coming directly from people behind bars. These are not coalition questions. These are questions from folks that are currently incarcerated. So this first one is going to be a little softball to Don, and then we can all talk about it. So the question says, you gave DOC the chance to release those meeting stringent requirements already near the end of their sentences for COVID reasons, yet they have only released under a few hundred of the nearly 3,000 immediately or since eligible, even with the strict guidelines. It is clear to us that DOC will never voluntarily release any substantial number of people. That said, will you please now commit to standing tall to force them legislatively to release thousands who have earned it by committing to supporting earned sentence credit expansion as was written in Don Scott's House Bill 1532 this past session? And Don, what I was hoping was that maybe you could, and I know you mentioned it before, but maybe you could give a brief explanation of the bill for folks that are watching that may not be familiar with what it means, and then talk about how we can push for that in this special session.
So I heard two separate, a lot of stuff. I guess the first thing is about the General Assembly giving the governor and DOC the authority to release folks. I have said over and over and over that the process by which they have begun to release people is dismal. I think the last number I saw was 355 from DOC and maybe 170 some odd from state jails, folks who were state responsible inmates who would have gone to DOC to do. So, and when I was, and when we were in the General Assembly, I remember when we voted on it, I think it was Delegate Rob Bell who stood up and said, they're gonna be releasing 6,000 people or something crazy like that who would be eligible. So now we know that, the bureaucracy and the financial incentives to keep people locked up outweigh even a pandemic. There are 300 and some odd folks who've been released out of thousands eligible, and more becoming eligible each day because it's 12 months, a year or less. So even with more becoming eligible each day, we've only had 300 and some odd, according to DOC's website. So first of all, yeah, it has been disappointing and anemic, and now you know how difficult it is to get the bureaucracy to change, the people who benefit from this mass incarceration system. There are a lot of people that eat off of Black, brown, and poor people, and they make a living off of this. This is how they survive, so we need to understand that. That's one. Two, in regard to the earned time credit bill, it is a bill that was designed, and Jen knows it well. It's a bill that the DOC already has a classification system, a 4-level classification system. And that 4-level classification system, they reward good time based on which level you are, and the levels depend on how well you've adjusted while you've been incarcerated, whether you've received infractions or not, whether you've participated in the program you're supposed to or not. If you are at level 1, then you get the full 15% off that people think everybody gets 15% off. When DOC testified in their hearing, they testified that only about 40-some-odd% of folks actually end up getting 15% off. And the other folks serve us almost all of their time. So the whole notion that people are getting some good time off is a fallacy. The majority of people do not get all of the so-called 15% of good time. They do almost day to day. That's one. So this new this process that we designed basically said folks would be able to, if they had a year-over-year of good conduct and no infractions and participated in programs, that they could earn up into 50% of their time off after a couple of years of no infraction. So they have to be infraction-free and programming. And people with a lot of time, anybody that's done time, like I have,
they know that the folks that really are sincere, they will change their behaviors and do the things they need to do. So that they just want peace so they can go home. So the faster we get those people out, the better it is for all of us, and safer and less expensive. So that's the bill in a nutshell. My bill did not delineate originally between violent and non-violent offenses. It just said whether you did the things you were supposed to do. I am going to reintroduce that bill as it was originally introduced without being, because I tried to accept some amendments to get it through and it still didn't pass. So this time I'm not accepting any amendments. We're going to get it done just like it is now. And they're going to have to vote it up or down, because one of the things that I've learned in my few months of serving now, that's one in January, so I'm 7 months old, I'm a veteran, is that I don't care what you say. I don't care about your sentiments. I don't care about you saying, oh, that's poor thing, what happened. I don't care about anything. I only care about one thing. I look up on that board and I see how you vote. That's it. So I'm going to ask everybody to pay attention to don't listen to me. Don't listen to Patrick. Don't listen to Joe Morrissey. Watch how we vote. We'll make sure that we're not giving you BS lip service. I got a lot of lip service when I was there from colleagues that I thought were going to vote for my stuff. And then when it came up to throw up a green light, they threw up a red with some reasoning that somebody is scared, because all the Republicans have to do is say rape, sex, baby, juvenile. And the next thing you know, my whole bill's done. 3 people may be affected by this that we don't want to be affected, so they throw it out. So I'm hopeful that this bill that rewards and encourages good behaviors while you're there to help people come home faster. Because one of the things that Joe was saying is about, the getting beat up with the handcuffs or whatever the police brutality is. Having been in this situation myself, I can think of not too many more things more brutal than yanking a loved one away from their family for crazy amounts of time, and when they're no longer a danger to themselves or others, and they're doing everything right. And that is violent. Not only is it violent physically, not only is it humiliating and degrading, but it also, more importantly, and I keep saying this over and over, follow the money. The prison system is a financial system. It's about economic empowerment in some communities and some people, and taking away the bodies that would be in this community. I live in Portsmouth, Virginia. I represent Portsmouth. If you look it up, I think it was a Pew Research or one of those other ones that do a lot of research. They did incarceration rates by zip code. Virginia has 3 of the top 10 incarceration rates by zip code. Not only that, Virginia might have about 6 of them in the top 30. All right, one's in Richmond. Portsmouth is like number 2 or 3, 23704, where I'm sitting. All right, is like number 3. And I think Norfolk is 6, and then Richmond maybe have one that's 8. And then Richmond got a lot more. Richmond got like 2 or 3 more. So Virginia is good at incarceration. They're very good at incarceration, but not so good at decarceration. So I'm hopeful that is what my earned time credit bill is about. And I won't even say it's mine, it's ours. And one of the things that I hate to see, and I keep saying I'm getting into bad habits, because people have ideas. It wasn't, I had an idea, and then other people brought me another idea, and we put the ideas together, and I was like, wow, this is what I've been trying to articulate, and we go. So it's our bill, and everybody that votes for it is their bill. I know a lot of people need to get credit and a pat on the back, and they can say, I introduced this bill. Man, if somebody's been talking about that bill for 20 years, and you just happen to catch it at the time where it could pass. So there's not a whole lot of new things under the sun, and I just want to reflect that and hope everybody will get involved. And I can say this, when I was there as a freshman, I reached out to a lot of advocacy organizations when I was running, and once I got there, and a lot of folks wouldn't even talk to me. And I always give Jen credit, because Jen reached out to me, and I was like, who the heck is this? And I looked up, and her little website was just weak as it could be posting. But her heart and her passion was so powerful and so strong. I talked to her, we talked nights, we talked weekends, and we put this thing together. So advocacy works. You don't have to have a huge organization that ignores people. You can have a small organization and you can slay a giant. And I'm gonna leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Don. Senator Morrissey and Delegate Hope, do either of you have anything you want to add as far as supporting earned sentence credits?
You asked us, Jen, if we would commit to supporting earned Senate credits. Absolutely, 100%. Don might be the director of the choir, but I'm part of that choir. I'm one of the singers, and I feel an obligation not only to support it, to get my Democratic colleagues to support it, but to reach out in the Senate to other moderate Republicans and explain why this is a good thing. It doesn't take rocket science to explain that if you can incentivize a DOC resident to do well in prison, to prepare himself or herself for reentry, that they'll get a credit, that you've made us a better Commonwealth. You have reduced the amount of money that we're spending to incarcerate somebody. We are preparing somebody for the future and a job with education. So I am 100% supportive of it. I look forward to the day that we're not talking about 15% time off, but rather 50, 60, or 70% time off. And I also want to thank Don for bringing out the fact that he mentioned follow the money 3 times. It's right. Look at the money. Isn't it a disgrace that we make money off inmates by charging them exorbitant amounts to call their kid, their child, their wife, their husband? We charge them huge amounts. We charge them money for the canteen that's exorbitant. We charge them to get a Tylenol, okay? This is not a third world country. So I'm there. And the last thing, Jen, you talked about, I wrote the governor early on in COVID-19. I listed a dozen people that should be released right away. People waiting trial for misdemeanor, convicted of a misdemeanor, with less than 12 months to serve, possessory offenses. And we've only released a fraction of those individuals. And right now, yesterday, I read an article, 43 people came down in Henrico jail with COVID-19. It shouldn't be a death sentence to be in jail. So that's something that I'm also going to push. And I'm not going to accept the administration's and DOC's theory or positioning or posturing that they're doing the best they can. They squarely are not.
And I would just add to that, I don't only support the sentencing bill that Delegate Scott has brought forward, the good credit bill. I voted for it twice. I voted for it in subcommittee and I voted for it in full committee, and it got a little detour there, but we need to get it back on the tracks. I will say this about trying to get people out of prison. When we reconvened in our veto session, we passed in our budget amendment to give the governor the authority to release nonviolent offenders in their last year of incarceration. And there's only about 500 people in that entire universe. And Delegate Scott's right, they've only acted on about 300 or so of it. We need to do a better job. We need to make sure that we are processing these requests faster. And I think it's a staffing issue. And I think in the budget there, we got to look at this because there's a number of clemency requests that have gone forward. I know we're now starting to implement Fishback, and I know people are starting to, there's about 300 people that are related to Fishback that will get their go before the parole board. We need to accelerate these processes much faster. And if it's a resource issue so that we get a faster time decision, we need to do that. And I would like to see us take action in the special session to give the DOC more resources so that they can process these claims faster. We have only, and this is mostly through attrition, since COVID occurred and we froze all new prisoners coming in, we went from 30,000 inmates across the DOC to just 28,000. We've got to do a better job than that. And there's many more ways to do that. I think Delegate Scott's bill is a good way to start to reduce that. Mandatory minimums is another one as well too that we got to look really close at.
Hey, Patrick, one of the reasons that DOC numbers are down is because they're taking fewer people from the jails into
right.
DOC. So
right.
it's a misleading suggestion that they are eliminating these people. But I have probably sent in my office under my Senate letterhead 50 to 75 letters where family members have contacted me and said, so-and-so needs to get out. And they give me a background that the person has less than 12 months to serve, has had a stellar institutional record, has a plan for release. And I'm writing each letter to the warden in the facility, asking them to consider releasing this person pursuant to the early release program. And one of the things we need to do, Patrick and Don, in the new session is examine the criteria that they're using, because there's some people who are literally poster children for early release. And, you know, I've done 75, how many have I done? At least 70 individual letters, but we need to do it on a larger scale.
All right. Thank you all for that. Let's move on to the next question. So we've got a few still from people behind bars. This next one says, recently, Brian Moran claimed the whole DOC has only 16 positive cases, but that is without recent testing. At State Farm Enterprise Unit, where about 140 tested positive around June 22nd, they suddenly claimed no positive cases in the building on July 2nd, treating everything as all clear without any further testing. Now they have us reusing meal trays from people in areas where some are still sick. They claim they are properly sanitized, but that seems risky and against CDC suggestions about sharing food. Plus, even then, the kitchen workers forced to wash them are at risk and can spread it where they live from that. It seems like they want to claim low numbers just to avoid release and transparency. I will add, as of today, State Farm has more positive cases. So just something to add in there. But the question is, what can you do as legislators to ensure that testing is the basis for all DOC actions? And whoever wants to jump in on that one, go ahead. Joe, you're muted. You're talking.
Joe, you're on mute.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I prefaced my comments, but I don't want to be trespassing on my co-legislator's time. But I questioned Secretary Moran the other day with that 16 figure. And I said, Secretary, there are 28,000 inmates with, according to your number, less than 5/100ths of 1% are testing positive. That's a statistic in probability. It doesn't happen. You can't have that. So first of all, let's be mindful. People aren't going from the jails to the prison, and the prisons are incubators of COVID-19. That's number one. Okay, I gave you the example a moment ago. So I think we have a huge number of people that are being sequestered in jails, and a large number in our prisons that have COVID-19 are either asymptomatic or severely sick. There's a range. In the special session, I am going to be raising that issue and those numbers and asking, you know, why aren't we releasing these people? Give me a reason why we're not releasing somebody from a potential death sentence. I'd love to hear from Patrick and Don.
I'll go next. I have been, I will say it has been difficult to get any information that makes sense. Even for me as a delegate, I've emailed and they told me to check the website. So I know how difficult it is when you advocate for folks who are don't have or powerless. Nobody seems to care what happens to them. From day one, I said that this thing would spread in prison, and the data has been scarce. One day they'll have 0 people with COVID at a site, and the next day they got 160. So I don't know if how they're testing. I don't think it's a gradual testing program. I really have asked, and they have not been very transparent. I'm very excited to get back to where they have to answer our questions face to face or lie to us in August, because I really don't trust anything that they're saying around data right now. I just don't. And that's because I understand the system intimately, and I understand the incentives and the financial incentives not to release people. Even now, when we have legislation that says you can release people who within a year, there are people who I've gotten letters from who are there for probation violations for possession with intent to distribute marijuana, no violence in their background, and they're not out for whatever reason. And the number of reasons I keep hearing is they have no home plan, they have nowhere to go, and all these things. So I'm looking forward to hopefully getting some data, some answers, and a little bit more than what they've given us so far, because I know that mostly this is Black, brown, and poor people
don't have a voice. And so we just keep asking these questions over and over, and hopefully we will embarrass them enough that they'll start to do something.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, I spoke to the DOC, I speak to the DOC frequently about this matter. They've got 28,000 system-wide at DOC. They claim to have tested 25,000, and that's about 90% of all the inmates. Now, that's probably just one time that they've tested them. They've showed 33 positives and 11 deaths. Now, that seems to be across the DOC, and especially in a secluded area like that, that seems pretty low to me. But I think that testing is the key. They claim to be following CDC guidelines, although what the inmate has just written in is clearly not that. And so we need to have a little bit more oversight. I think that you will see some hearings, at least on behalf of the Public Safety Committee, right after we get through special session. I'd like to have some oversight hearings, to have some folks, Jen, like you and others, come forward and describe what they're seeing and what they're hearing from inmates and their clients that are in our prisons, and have the DOC directly respond. That's the only way we're going to try to hold them accountable. There needs to be accountability within the DOC. They haven't had this kind of oversight before, but that's about to change.
I love that oversight is what you're honing in on, Delegate Hope. And the Humanization Project has been putting together a document of sort of documenting all of the different things that have happened, at least in one facility. So we can definitely give that to you and be happy to testify with it or whatever you need. But as far as the oversight goes right now, and I'm sorry, this is a tangent on my own question, there is no oversight of DOC. So as legislators, what can be done to create that oversight?
Well, I can take a stab at it. I remember when, not that long ago, when we had several deaths in the jails, that was a wake-up call for us to do just that. And we recreated the Board of Corrections we pushed out a lot of retired and some sheriffs that were made up the Board of Corrections, and we put a professional group on there so that they had some oversight authority to investigate. There is no such thing as the DOC, and that's a very good point. And I think Senator Morrissey, you might have asked this question of the secretary, and I don't think the answer was actually it was Senator Servo, I believe, and I don't think that we answered that question. There isn't any oversight, is the answer, and we may need to explore. It might be one of the only places in our government that deserves such oversight that doesn't have it, and so that would actually require us to create some sort of bureaucracy, some independent bureaucracy that needs to have oversight. But I think it's something we should closely examine, and maybe it's something we could take up in the 2021 session.
Jim, there's an expression, who polices the police? In this situation, the analogy would be, who's going to police DOC if DOC is this entity that is hard to put your hands onto and makes it more difficult. I'm not satisfied with simply saying, well, let's just do a JLOC study on it. But in answer to your question, I think you begin with an oversight group that is comprised of legislators, 3 of whom I'm seeing on my screen right now, who are committed to real reform. All of us believe that second chance is a good thing. And let me also say this, I've heard so many bills that come in and they say, but not for violent offenders. I can't stand that. Why not? Why do we have to wait 41 years for the Vincent Martins to get paroled, all right? And here's a statistic. Anybody out there have an idea of the one crime that is where the person is least likely to be a recidivist? Do you have an idea? First-degree murder. So suggesting that we're not going to give second chances to people who commit violent crimes it's not just silly, it's stupid. So anyway, the answer is I'd like to have legislators who people that are the mindset of the group here on an oversight committee that has some teeth in it, because right now we're asking the hard questions, but they don't have to respond.
Yeah, thank you, Senator Morrissey. That's, yeah. So let's move on to another question. This one says, prison officials treat our concerns about COVID-19 as a security issue first and a health issue second. As a result, our well-being too often comes in second place, and we feel shortcuts that are taken put us in potential harm. I therefore would like to ask, can you push to have an official from the Virginia Department of Health visit each facility for the purpose of investigating how prison officials are dealing with people behind bars and COVID-19, and have that include interviewing people behind bars? I thought this was a very interesting question for them to ask. I don't know if it's something that you three can help with, but I thought it was an interesting sort of a very kind of logical thing to ask for, to have the Department of Health be something that can come in and inspect what they're doing. So if anybody has any thoughts on that, please go ahead, speak up.
The number one incubators of COVID-19 in the country are your senior centers, your rehabilitation centers, your assisted living facilities. They are the number one incubators, okay? And following right next to them, jails, prisons, and VDH goes into the former, they need to go into the latter. What a great question and a great thought. And I think it's, yes, I think it's a great idea to have VDH go into prisons and jails, all right? See what they're doing to treat people. Been there, see what's going on. I've seen what's going on inside there, and it's disgraceful in some areas.
Yeah, it is a good question, and I'll go one step further. I think that each prison should have a dedicated person that's in charge of infection control. That's what I'd like to see in our nursing homes, and there's no reason why we shouldn't have a dedicated person that is in charge of infection control within the prisons. Right now, even the Virginia Department of Health doesn't have as much enforcement authority over nursing homes. I mean, we had to move heaven and earth just to get them to start reporting which nursing homes had cases and deaths. And this is something that it could be leading from our previous question about under this accountability and transparency. And so I think that makes perfect logical sense to have someone in charge of infection control that can protect the safety and well-being of prisoners.
Question.
Yeah, I like that idea of having a contact person, Delegate Hope, and something, this isn't in the questions right now, but something that my partner who is behind bars, he and I had talked about at the beginning of the COVID thing, was to attempt to set up a person behind bars as a contact person for reporting what was going on. And I told him, I said, TOC is never gonna let that happen. But if you guys wanted to push for that, I think that was also an interesting idea, because, there's a lot of good, intelligent people behind bars that could participate in trying to inform what should be done and what should be going on. Delegate Scott, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I didn't have anything to add on that. I think they pretty much covered everything. That's nothing new. I mean, I guess I'm just never surprised. So I mean, right. I just think those are one of the things that we have to continue to fight about when we're dealing with folks who don't view people as people. That's part of the problem. We got to have leaders that have some empathy and want to make sure that people are doing well and don't mind telling the truth. Because part of it is people think that they're going to be in trouble if the truth gets out and it's going to make them look incompetent or something like that. In reality, we just want people to be healthy, have an opportunity to come home healthy and go ahead, and we don't want people to get sick. So I just think part of that whole culture is, I'm not surprised, that's the culture. Yeah.
So we're going to do one more question from people behind bars. This will be our last one from them tonight. And then we're going to move to fielding some questions from the folks that are on the Zoom call, which are the coalition members, and then the folks that are in the Facebook, watching the Facebook Live. But this last question from our friends behind bars says, big reform takes courage and requires winning public opinion. All polls now show overwhelming support for reforming systemic racism in the criminal justice system. But historically, many Democrats, not you three, here have failed to stand up and loudly decry the blatant stereotype-driven fear-mongering contrary to evidence shouted by a few Republicans whenever this comes up. This occurred recently when they were the only voice in the media regarding a few high-profile parole cases, which specifically led to fewer approvals. Are you prepared to vocally fight claims of, quote, murderers, rapists, and molesters terrorizing your implied white kids in the press and on the floor? Are you willing to push your colleagues to join you in demanding evidence-based reform and second chances for all who earn them, needed to enhance public safety? All right, so whoever wants to jump in on that one, go for it.
Well, I could just start and say yes. I mean, these are just scare tactics, and we've seen them for years. And you know, it's even in this session. I think it was Delegate Bell that stood up and questioned us about the nonviolent offenders, and questioned about fishback and parole and all kinds of things like that. They're just scare tactics. When you think of the worst possible exaggerated claim, and you say that's going to be everybody that's in that position. And they're just scare tactics. They're just trying to get the attention. And it's not going to stop us because we know what's right. And we know that protecting people, giving people second chances, treating people like the human beings that they are, deserve that opportunity. And so that's why we're going to stay together and change. And I remember there was a time when some things that were being smart on crime wasn't just a Democratic issue. It was conservatives supported it too in other states. You have these movements that are even in southern states. You had movements where people are closing down prisons because you're able to get people out of prisons, and you changed mandatory minimums. You changed how we treated sexually violent predators. All kinds of things like that can do a world of good, not a Democratic or Republican issue, but they're scare tactics that the other side is using right now, and we will not be deterred.
I'll let the esteemed senator go last because I'm sure he's going to have a lot more to say on this, but he already said it. He's not going to be deterred by it. We already know they're scare tactics. They always use them. I was begging them not to change the bill, but to get something through, I was like, okay. And then they still, killed it. So at the end of the day, I'm not going to do that again. I learned a valuable lesson that's just a trick. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, and sometimes I need y'all to understand the scare tactics. I know we say it's just a scare tactic, but it works emotionally. People are afraid. They're worried that if they're going to play this video in their district, that this guy is all about releasing murderers and rapists and child molesters, and they use it and it works. I'm watching it. I see it. It works. And so if we don't inculcate ourselves now, what prevents people from caving like that, Democrats and or Republicans, is that the advocates, the people, they show up and they let them know it's okay. I got you. If you do this, we're going to come out for you. We're going to support you. And what happens is people take these courageous stands and they look back and there's nobody behind them. They're by themselves. They've been left out there, walk the plank by themselves. So the energy of having folks with you on these issues and an affirmation keeps some people who may not be as don't do this every day, may not be as well versed as Senator Morrissey is on these issues. They're not as comfortable. And so we need to make sure that we're bolstering those people up during this entire time. So because I know some people are like, man, that's just wrong. We should do that. But you don't understand, everybody has different experiences. And so I try to respect those experiences, even though I do not disagree, I do not agree with them. We have to understand that so we can meet them where they are to get them up. You would be surprised to know that there was another delegate who was a Republican, Delegate Campbell, who also introduced an increase in earned time credit. He introduced a bill, and his bill had lower numbers than mine was. It wasn't as far as mine, but then he said he would allow his bill to be incorporated into my bill. So there's a place over there that if we use this moment, we can get some Republicans as well to climb on this. So I don't think this is just a Democrat or Republican, because I know this issue is a common sense issue. We just got to take some of the hyperbole away from what they've been able to do over the past and bring it back to what we know this is really about, which is about the money. And if we can keep showing that, and it's not about evidence-based, if we do evidence-based about recidivism, we talk about those who do well while they're there, who are just, then the data will show that those people who they think shouldn't get a chance are the ones that should very well get a chance. So we need to just take a look at that. And I feel like if we stick to our guns and stay focused, yeah, we'll fight for those folks.
We'll fight for everybody to get an opportunity to prove that to earn, that's what the earn time credit, to earn an opportunity to come home early. That's it.
Jen, I remember, I'll mention two names, Vincent Martin and Roger Fentress. And I remember when Vincent Martin was paroled, there was the usual fearmongers came forward and said, we're releasing murderers and rapists into our system, into our community. First of all, let's be clear, not one individual who's been released for murder, robbery, rape has recommitted. That's number one. Number two, when that occurred, I wrote an op-ed piece throughout the Commonwealth supporting Vincent Martin's being granted parole. The only thing that I was upset about is the parole board stayed it for 30 days and doing a review. And I said, there's no reason for a review. He unanimously received parole from 4 members and a 4-0 vote. He served 41 years. And let me tell you something, Vincent's doing okay now. I had lunch with him a few days ago. He's got a job. Our office is going to help him pursue actual exoneration. I've read the transcript. Okay, what was done, discovery that was withheld in his case is disgraceful. He's probably innocent. But let me tell you something, 41 years behind bars, and for anybody to suggest he doesn't deserve an opportunity to show the rest of the Commonwealth that he has redeemed himself is simply wrong. Roger Fentress was 15 years old when he was given a 53-year sentence. And I also did another op-ed piece that appeared throughout the Commonwealth, why he deserved parole and or to be pardoned, and he was just last week. So I've never been reticent to speak out when I see an injustice. I'm going to continue to do that. It doesn't, I simply, what are you going to do? Lock me up if I speak out? I mean, it's like, what can you do to me? I'm going to continue to be that advocate. Why are you laughing, Don? Why are you laughing, Patrick?
That's why we love you, Senator Morrissey.
Man, you're making my day. I love you. You gangster. That's why I like you. You gangster.
Thank you all so much for answering those questions. And I got way more questions from people behind bars than we were able to do tonight. If the 3 of you are open to it, I'm going to put them all together in a document for all of you and just send them to you. And if you feel compelled to answer, I know they would all love to hear back from you. You have no idea how much it would mean to them. Delegate Scott and Senator Morrissey, you may have an idea how much it would mean to them, having been behind bars yourself. So, just getting their voices heard and their questions answered is so amazing for all of them. So, and for all of us really, because they're asking the questions that we're asking too. So right now we're going to switch gears and take some questions from the coalition and from people that are on Facebook. So, Brett, are you able to, there we go. So Brett is going to ask, maybe just introduce yourself real quick and then ask your question that we have.
Brett Blobom, I'm an attorney in the Richmond area, do mostly capital defense work, but have taken a special interest in the COVID issue. You've all talked about the disconnect between the budget amendment that you voted for and what the reality on the ground has been ever since then. And you've talked about potentially an oversight committee of the legislature that would sort of see the bigger picture. But my question for you is, would you support, or do you see an avenue for providing counsel for the people who qualify under the amendment that was passed, but are being blocked by DOC? If DOC says they don't have a viable home plan, an attorney is in a position to find the solution for that oftentimes people who don't have a voice on the outside can't. Do you see that being possible?
Don, you want to go first or do you want me to?
You go first, sir.
Okay. Brett, are you talking about providing counsel to an individual who's coming before the parole board pursuant to a fishback review, giving that person counsel?
I would love to see that as well, but I'm talking specifically about the budget amendment to release people from DOC who are under a year left on their sentence, where DOC is saying they don't qualify because they don't have a home plan.
Yeah. there's a number, as you may know, there's a number of folks out there that are already volunteering their services. I probably take a couple of calls a day to help line up attorneys to represent somebody at a soon to be scheduled parole hearing. I think it's a great idea. I imagine you probably have donated your time, your services as well. With regard to a budget amendment for in this session to provide counsel to somebody who is serving, got less than 12 months to go. I think it's you're the first person to suggest that. I think it's a great idea. And I will look into it, and I'll turn to people like you to give me maybe some data so I can get that prepared prior to session.
Yeah, I'm wondering, Brett, it's a good question, because when I spoke to the DOC today, they mentioned that as one of their barriers to being eligible for release for these nonviolent offenders. Is that something that has been suggested to the DOC? In other words, is there anything that prevents an attorney to represent their client and to help in that aspect?
I'm not sure that anybody's tried it, but as far as going into court and having a bond hearing, like if you let people do it on their own, the judge is going to hold them. Whereas if they have an attorney, they're going to let them go. And so if you had that in place with the DOC as well, I think you would see a lot more people being released.
Hey, Brett, remember right now, these people that are being considered for release, nothing is going before the judiciary. Right now, it's limited to letters that folks like Don and Patrick and myself send. Like I said, I've done about between 50 and 70 letters to individuals, for individuals, and I send it to the warden in the prison, saying, pursuant to their early release program, here's this person. He's got 4 months to go, 8 months to go. His home plan has already been vetted. It's a solid program. He has been infraction free for the last 6 years. I've just been doing it myself with a letter to the warden. I don't know how many of them have been granted parole, but I'm going to continue to do it as I'm asked. But right now, there is no avenue to get that person before a circuit court judge and say, look, this is actually a rock solid home plan, release program. Here's his job. Here's where he's going to be living. Here's his support structure. So I've got my legislative assistant sitting in here, and he's already made notes, and we're going to check about the practicality of a budget amendment to provide those type of services.
Yeah, my understanding is a DOC decision, but the question is would, because the question is would it make a difference to have that type of representation? And that's what I think I'd want to explore.
Yeah, it's a DOC decision. And again, it goes back to incentives and oversight. There's no incentive for DOC to let anybody out based on the numbers. If you just look at what they've done so far. And there's no oversight, so you can't appeal it. There's no appeal process that says, hey, why didn't you let this guy out? And they just, because we didn't think it was a good home plan. I've talked to some DOC folks as well, and they always say the first thing is a home plan. But there are so many people who are within a year, they're coming out anyway, so they're gonna let them out when their time is up anyway, home plan or no home plan. So I just think that is a red herring. And I think we need to figure out a way to take a look at that. I like that idea. And I don't know if that's an ombudsman or some court-appointed person just to look at those cases right now because of these unique circumstances. Maybe that's something we can explore during this next special session, because they have been so anemic in releasing folks.
Thank you.
So, thank you all.
Yeah, and write the legislation.
Okay. So we have over 200 questions and comments in the Facebook Live. So we're not going to get to all of them. So I'm trying to pick and choose things that we're going to get to. So let's see. Okay, so from Kimberly, is this Kimberly Snodgrass? Do you want to jump on and ask your solitary confinement question by any chance? If not, I'll ask it. But I see it there if you would like to jump in yourself. Oh, and also, I've been instructed to say that our COVID-19 Justice Coalition has a legislative committee, and they are working on that legislation that we were just talking about. And they are committed to provide it to them, to you all. So there we go. So Kimberly, do you want to ask the solitary question? Or if not, if you're not on here, I will go ahead and ask it.
No, I'll ask that. I'm right here.
Awesome.
Okay. I'm Kimberly Jenkins Snodgrass, Interfaith Action for Human Rights. Delegate Hope, you and I have been working on for 2 sessions now, a bill to end solitary confinement. And we have discussed this. I just want to share with the audience your position on ending solitary confinement in Virginia. As we all know, the ACLU presented a report last year and asked for an executive order. So where are you with that?
Well, let me just back up and say I was elected in 2009, and probably 2 years later, after most delegates and senators receive a number of letters from inmates in our DOC, I received one compelling letter from someone who had been in solitary confinement for more than 12 years in Red Onion. And I've done something that I think very few legislators have done. I've taken a tour of Red Onion. I've done it actually twice. I've gone to Red Onion, and I've walked the solitary cell block and talked to some of the inmates. And you have a situation where you clearly know that someone locked in solitary confinement, a confined space that's the size of a parking lot for any length of time, is a mental health disaster. It amounts to torture. There's no other way to sugarcoat it. And so that's when I became convinced that we needed to end solitary confinement. Like a lot of states, it's not a radical idea, but to end solitary confinement and prohibit it in the code. And so for the last couple of years, I've brought a bill to do that. This past year, the Department of Corrections put a pretty sizable fiscal cost attached to it, which basically killed the bill. We got the bill out of Public Safety Committee, and it died in Appropriations Committee. But this is the kind of reforms that we need to make in a civil society. I feel the same way about the death penalty. I feel the exact same way about solitary confinement. We live in a civil society. We cannot lock people up in solitary confinement for 23 hours a day, 7 days a week. It is torture, bottom line. And so I'll continue to work with you, Kimberly, and the other advocates to get to a point where we can ban solitary confinement in Virginia.
Thank you.
Yes. You know, isn't it almost laughable to suggest, Patrick, that it would cost more money to release somebody from solitary confinement into GP? That makes intuitively, it makes no sense. If you were to tell me what would cost more, I would say it would cost more to put somebody in solitary confinement where they have one-on-one contact with the people that deliver their meals or something like that. And just because they gave you that statistics, appropriations, doesn't make it true.
I agree with the last sentiment for sure. They put a price tag on my bill, on the bill that I introduced, that was crazy to prevent the earned time credit bill from going through. They're not even taking into account the savings of maybe less people incarcerated, not taking into account the savings to maybe shutting down a prison or 2 or 3, and saving money on that infrastructure. They just put some exorbitant price tag on it that made it. And the administration agencies do that, and they put those price tags to scare the hell out of everybody, and it always works. And I will say this about solitary confinement, having been there myself. It is inhumane. It can break some folks. There's no doubt that I'm sure there are many people who've been there have PTSD when they come out, because that's a very traumatic experience. So I would be, I'm definitely supporting anything that ends that barbaric.
Hey, Patrick, one thing that I want to let you know is that it is part of one of the omnibus bills that I'm introducing in the special session is the following. We're always told how much a program is going to cost, but you know what we never hear in the General Assembly is what bill will allow for cost savings. So part of my equity, restoring equity to the sentencing process is to require agencies to determine the cost savings for a particular instance of criminal justice reform.
I love it. I love it. That's the best thing I heard on this call so far, because we need that, because they always kill us with cost, not even talking about the savings. In some kind of way, they'll say, well, if you release all those folks, now we got to hire more parole and probation people to track them all down. We can track a package from China to Richmond easily and know exactly where it goes. So, I mean, I'm not saying that's what we need to do, but there's a way to track people safely and make sure they do what they need to do. But they always come up, well, we need all this new infrastructure. No, you don't. No, you don't. Call Amazon. Let's get Amazon to do this thing. Stop playing.
But,
Yeah.
and
I love that too, Senator Morrissey. I hope you can push for that. That'd be helpful in so many ways for so many bills. We're going to take one more question from a coalition member, and then we're going to get things wrapped up. So Just Future Project is one of the members of our coalition, and they deal specifically, and Senator Morrissey, I know you know them, they deal specifically with VCBR. And if people don't know what that is and what that's about, I know I personally was completely appalled last year when I learned what it is. VCBR is a place where if you were in prison for a quote violent sexual crime, when you get to the end of your prison sentence, you can be continually detained. So you've served your time and they put you in a supposed mental health facility. And then at that point, that person is staying in prison, basically, they don't call it prison, staying in prison on a crime that they will supposedly commit in the future. I don't know about all of you, but I think this is appalling and I have no idea how it's legal. So with that said, Garnett, I think you're on here, or Kirsten, whoever would like to ask one of your questions. I know you had a few questions. We only have a few more minutes, but if you could ask whichever one is the most pressing for you, that would be wonderful.
Well, I'm on, so I'll start. This is Garnet Robbins Boffman, and I'm with Just Future Project.
you already asked.
The COVID, and I apologize for reading it. The COVID-19 pandemic has put Virginia in financial straits, getting back to what we were just talking about. Making mass incarceration, including those imprisoned in the shadow prison of VCBR, run by the Department of Behavioral Health and Development Services for the Attorney General's office, untenable. The cost of incarcerating these citizens who have completed their prison terms is over $130,000 per person per year. And that's just what's disclosed. Currently, 440 people. The more and more are being added to fill an additional 258 cells. Virginia communities are desperate for real mental health and social services. What are you committed to doing to ensure that these funds are equitably distributed to the communities where their need is the greatest, so true mental health and social health can occur?
Let me start. I have asked Legislative Services to draft a bill for the 2021 session to end this appalling situation of civil commitment. When I first heard about it, I thought I'd seen all forms of violations of due process. Nothing shocked me more than to find out that there were people who have completed a 20-year sentence. They have served the maximum time, 17 years, and then they were being committed civilly. Why? Because they might commit a civil crime. This involves aggravated sexual offenses. Let me just put this in proper perspective, Don. That's like somebody who's been in jail and they had committed 10 bank robberies, okay? And then they're getting ready to be released, and somebody looks at their record and says, you know what? You have a propensity for committing bank robberies. I know you've just finished serving your time, but we're going to put you in another building that has bars on it that prevents you from realizing your liberty, because you might commit another bank robbery. You might commit another grand larceny. You might possess another Schedule 1 or 2 drug. It's appalling. It violates every notion of due process that I can think of. So I've asked, my staff and I have asked legislative services to draft legislation. Patrick and Don, hopefully we will get that out of the Senate, and you will have an opportunity to vote in the House once and for all to end this appalling practice of civil commitment, because somebody might commit a crime in the future.
Well, that bill will definitely save money, because we're spending hundreds of millions of dollars to operate VCBR right now, to warehouse people, to your point, for not crimes they committed, for crimes that they might commit. It should be declared to be unconstitutional. And to see them put themselves in different, tie themselves in knots, the Attorney General's office, even Mark Herring's office, to see how they put themselves in knots to make stuff up, to have these civil commitment hearings, this whole process seems to be rigged to me. And so we need to revamp our civil commitment process. We need to end it and release people. These set of sexually violent predators, these criminals, these people are no more likely to reoffend than anyone else. And probably, in fact, they're probably less likely to reoffend than most anyone else. And so we're locking them up for what? Out of fear, not out of facts, not out of science. And we have to do something about it.
You know, folks, my legislative assistant just provided me with a statistic. VCBR was given $110 million to build a new facility in 2019. Imagine how much, if we had donated or dedicated that same amount of money to providing actual rehabilitation services, how much we would have improved the Commonwealth. So whoever is interested in that question that's out there that's listening, there's a number of us that have this on our radar.
Thank you.
So yeah, let me just add, Senator Morrissey is taking this on, and I think Just Future Project would love to have a delegate take it on the House side too. So if anybody wants to jump on that, that would be good. Also, I want to add, especially since this is the Virginia COVID-19 Justice Coalition, that when we're thinking about this transparency and oversight, I know I'm guilty of this also. I always say DOC because that is my focus. But let's make sure that when we think about, anything you guys can implement as far as transparency, oversight, releases and stuff, that VCBR and even also the ICE detention centers and all of the state facilities be included in those types of things with the transparency, oversight, and release. So right now I'm going to have Jenny from the ACLU come back on, and Jenny's going to go through just some asks of our panelists and asks of the public.
Thanks, Jen. And just from a personal standpoint, this has been an incredibly engaging and really, really, really interesting panel discussion. And we will definitely be following up on so many of the things that y'all have shared you're working on, because we're interested in working on the same things. So we've got a couple of kind of asks of the panelists and a couple of asks for folks that are viewing. So I'll start with the panelists. We would just we ask you to make a commitment to pursue policy changes that will decarcerate urgently, transparently, and with real oversight, starting with the support of legislation that mandates the consistent review and release of at-risk people and attempts to just draw down the number of people who are behind bars that pose absolutely no threat to public safety. Right now, there is way too much discretion in the hands of the DOC in making these decisions. You'll mention that, but the process is going very slow, very few releases, the numbers don't make sense. So we think there's just way too little oversight for this to even be happening. We also would ask that you consult with those who are closest to the problems, talk to people who are behind bars and formerly incarcerated people, and consult directly with impacted families before crafting any legislative solutions. We really think that folks that are proximate are going to have those solutions, and they should be driving that conversation. It's one of the reasons why we really wanted to have Senator Morrissey and Delegate Scott here tonight. So we believe you are in such a unique position to be able to offer solutions even from that perspective as well. As far as the public that's here listening, we ask that you reach out to your legislators and ask that the budget amendment that was set to give discretion to the DOC to release folks that have less than 12 months on their sentence can be made permanent and compulsory during the special session. So we want to see action on that. And that they just take bold action towards our demands. So you can reach out to your local legislators. Obviously, we have folks here that are, legislators here that are really committed to change and to reform, but they are not. They're unfortunately a bit more unique than I would like them to be. So our other ask is to take a look at our Facebook page. We've actually been, as a follow-up from the last panel that we had several Commonwealth's attorneys here, super powerful person in the criminal legal system. And what we did is Johanna has crafted a really great letter that you can send to your CA in your locality to try to get them to be more of an advocate for reviewing cases. We had, I think, 4 CAs come on, and each one of them said, I would review any case. So, we want to hold them to that, and you should encourage your CAs to do the same, to review anyone's case and say, hey, I think you should look at this. This is a person that shouldn't be serving or needs a new hearing, or should have a new bond hearing or something like that. So you can take a look at that letter and you can send that to your CA and just kind of draft in their names and everything. And you can find out more information about that and what Commonwealth attorneys do if you're not familiar on our website, on our Facebook page. We should get a website.
We should get a website. So let's just take the next couple minutes. We're almost right at 8 o'clock, but just take a moment. Each of our panelists, thank you again so much for being here. If you have any closing remarks, and also anything you want to tell the folks watching as far as how they can help your efforts and how they can help our efforts, and just what can people do, whatever you guys want to close with, just go ahead and chime in as you feel fit.
Well, Jen, first of all, thanks for inviting me to participate in this. It's, like I said, it's been an honor to be on the same panel with my colleagues in the legislature, Patrick and Don. I have an ask, and it's something that they can do. As a legislator, nothing gets my attention more, nothing, than when somebody calls up and they say, I'm a constituent, I vote, and can I meet you? They're the first ones that get into my office. And if you do that, your senator, your delegate, even if it's an R, not just a D, they will meet with you. If you sit down there in front of that legislator and you say, listen, my family, I have a large family, I have an extended family, or I'm in the community, I am the director of, whatever. Here's what is important to me. You have got that legislator's attention. So, and the best time is not during session. No, the best time is in the summer and the fall and the winter leading up to January, where you sit down in that delegate or senator's office and look them and say, listen, I live on such and such a street. I am your constituent. I vote every primary and general election. You have that legislator's attention, and then give them your ask, whether it's parole reform, police reform, COVID-19 relief, if it's sentencing reform, tell them what you want. I am telling you that resonates, and that will carry so much more weight than 1,000 people standing outside the window carrying guns and clamoring for action. So that's my ask. Reach out in person to your delegate or senator, and when you get their office, tell them, I am so-and-so's constituent, and if they happen to be involved in an organization, let them know they're all voters.
I'll go ahead and go next. I think you all know this, but advocacy is a contact sport. and you have to stay engaged. And you can't just do webinars. You have to Joe's point, to build on Senator Morrissey's point, you have to meet with your legislators and show up in Richmond. You know, I gave you the 3 dates that we're meeting for our hearing: July 22nd, July 29th, and August 6th. And we're going to have those dates to be singular in their focus. If you are interested in the focus of that particular hearing, make sure you sign up to testify. Make sure you submit written comments if we don't have time to hear your public testimony. Continue to meet with your legislators. Let me tell you something. The ground is shifting on criminal justice reform right now. And we need to take advantage of this opportunity to level the playing field. For so long, it's been uphill. We can level the playing field and make progress, because I believe change is coming. Thank you.
Delegate Hope, can you just clarify those 3 dates? No one's testifying in person, is that correct? It will be online?
They're all virtual, yes.
Oh,
They're all
just wanted to
virtual.
make sure. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. And also, how are you going to be announcing the focus of each one of those dates?
Yes, we will be. And again, July 22nd is the first date. And stay tuned online. This will be promoted, but of course, but it will be online. You can have a sign up page for you to sign up at the appropriate hearing for the topic that you're interested in.
Okay, if you could share that with me or Kimberly or anybody else as soon as you know, then we can share it with the coalition. And
I will. It'll be any day now.
Thank you. Delegate Scott.
Yeah, am I muted? No, I'm out. No, I just wanted to thank you for having me this evening. It was good. I'm glad to be here with folks who share the passion that I have. I can tell that everybody, I'm looking at some of the comments here in Zoom, and I'm looking at some of the comments on Facebook. And I think, what Senator Morrissey said is important. Advocacy is important. Constituents drive this. People call me and send me letters from all over. I'm like, dude, it's good that you emailing me and calling me, but go call that dude that's in Shenandoah Valley that you live near. Your family's there. Go hit him up. Don't be afraid of the folks who may not immediately share your view. They will listen to you too if you come at them correctly and often enough. They'll get tired of you coming to them. So you have to hit all of the pockets. Don't just keep fishing in the same water hole. Go to some different holes and try to expand our reach. That's one. And then last, I just want to say, the energy that we have now, the folks who are opposed to criminal justice reform and changing this criminal punishment system, they have a lot of patience. They are waiting on us to what they think will be go too far to the left and screw everything up and then have a pendulum swing the other way. They are waiting on our mistakes. That's why they are so very quiet on these issues. Those folks who don't share our passion to see justice done, they're very quiet right now. And so what we have to do is all of the advocates, we got to start putting those people on the record right now. I'm looking at y'all's Twitter. I'm looking at all that usual suspects. We got to start tapping into some of them other folks, going on their stuff, calling them out, asking where they stand, and getting them to commit to these issues now. If you wait until they're back in their comfort zone, it'll be too late. This is the time to get people on the record, because it's mighty quiet, and we're talking to the people. We're kind of like operating in the echo chamber. We're only talking to people that agree with us. We need to get some of those folks who you don't think agree with you, get them on the record. Go get your Twitter. What y'all got? Twitter games. Go get your Twitter game and go hit up some of those other folks and change them over to a yes vote and ask them where they stand on these issues, because they're going to stay quiet if you allow them to. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for being here. As Jenny said, this was such an engaging and I think educational town hall, and it was so nice having you, Senator Morrissey and Delegate Hope and Delegate Scott. And as I said, I will send you all questions from folks behind bars, and also if we can put them together, some of the questions that were in the Facebook chat and in the Zoom chat that didn't get answered, just so you all can see them. And we look forward to continuing the dialogue with all of you and to working on legislation as we go forward and to seeing what we can do in this special session. So I hope everybody has a good night, and thank you to everyone that tuned in the Zoom and on Facebook. And we should have another town hall in a couple weeks. So look out for who all is going to be on that one. All right.
Hey,
thank
Jen,
you,
can I tell my children that are waiting for me to come home for dinner that I'm on my way? I'm on my way home for dinner right now.
Yes.
They're watching right now.
Awesome. Thank you all.
Good night.
Good night.